Well, we got the mouth of West Palm Beach, the most feared YouTube commentator in PLDA history, but we're on a 3-second tape delay. So, Bobby Bradley, welcome.
I promise I won't say any bad words, on purpose.
All good, man. Thanks for being on here.
No, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So I'd love to, pick your brain and hear what you're seeing, see what you're hearing, whatever, leading up to the World Championship here in a couple weeks. But first, let's let everybody know, if they don't know you already, because obviously you do a lot of commentary for the PLDA, but you've been a top competitor for 15 years now. So what's your background in long drive for people who don't know?
Well, my background was in baseball. I was a first-round draft pick out of high school in West Palm Beach, Florida, a town called Wellington, and played professionally from 99 to 2006. Unfortunately, that 5-ounce baseball kicked my ass. I had 5 surgeries and permanent nerve damage in my pitching hand, and stumbled upon long drive one day in 2007. Was playing golf with my dad and scouting director with the Pirates, and they had a competition flyer for a state qualifier for the Remax, World Championships, and played a lot of cards back in the day. And all the guys that I played poker with were golfers, and one of them was Raymond Floyd's son, Robert. And I was like, I want to enter a long drive tournament. He mentioned Bang driver. So I went online and Bang driver and entered a local not too far from my house. And Dave Zajac was the host, who's been around for a long time. And I won. I beat the 2000 world champ, who was Victor Johansson, a couple other guys that had been to Worlds. And my first tour event was in St. Louis in 2007. And I showed up with one driver. I had no idea. I see Jay-Z with like 500 drivers, as we would call it, a bouquet of drivers. He had 2 humongous staff bags with heads, and I went there with one driver and ended up, I did well enough to get my exemption to Worlds that year. So some guy came up to me, he's like, do you realize who you've competed against and you've won in these however many sets and you've got an exemption to Worlds? And I was like, well, I still got to go to regional. He goes, no, everybody that's in this tournament now is currently exempt. So That's how I went to Mesquite my first year, which was the last year it was at the Palms before going over, Mesquite Sport Complex.
What a start.
Yeah.
Do you think that you were able to jump in that quickly just because of your pitching history, or had you been practicing for long drive, or how'd that go?
No, I literally just had surgery on my hand like a couple months before that. I had a nice little zipper in my hand, and I played golf my entire life. Honestly, I thought I was a better golfer than I was a baseball player, but my junior year in high school, we were out at a tournament in LA, and one of the USA Today beat writers is like, you and Josh Beckett are the top high school prospects in the country. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? He goes, you're going to get drafted in the first round. So I'm like, okay, and kind of took golf to the wayside. But when I knew I was able to generate speed, like I'd hustle in the locker rooms back in the day. All the guys that were in the big league locker room, I'm like, I'll bet you 1,000 a yard, I'll bet them whatever, that I could beat them. And, no one really took me up on my offer, but I've had some interesting stories hitting drivers in spring training. I almost hit the assistant coach on purpose because he wanted to let us go through. Waited for 3 holes, and a hole was like 360 yards, but cut the corner. It was maybe about 325, and I put it right on top of him. His name was Pete McCannon, and I said, we got to keep it PG on here. But the words that came out of their mouth wasn't very nice, and they were pissed off at me. And the next day, the manager of the Pirates said to never do that again. But then he asked me what type of driver I had. So he was interested in the driver that I was hitting that time. It was Tiger Woods' Nike head. So, but it's been fun. Long drive's been a lot of fun. It's taken us all over the world. It really, truly has. Like, we've been able to compete in China, Mexico City, Dubai, London, Canada.
So you've been, especially going back, I think it was 2017 and 18, they had a bunch of events in, like you said, Dubai and Mexico City. What were some of your favorite places you've been to for that?
It was all fun. Obviously China was interesting. We just kind of showed up to some island in China and hoping that the event would run well, and maybe someone got a credit card and swiped for $40-something thousand to just rent the range out for a couple days. But at the end of the day, there was a winner and everybody got paid. So that was an interesting year, especially for me, because you and I made the TV rounds in 2017. I ended up going up against Justin, which, in my opinion, he was the best hitter. And, I tried taking him down, but he was only like 20 miles per hour faster than me. So the odds of me winning, I was praying he'd go out of bounds. There were some things that we could have done with that grid, things that you look back on that you could have changed. And there was so much tailwind that year. At the beginning of the episode, I believe Ryan Riesbeck and Wes were the first guys to go off, but never saw the team event with Tommy Hug and Jeff Flagg, and they were hitting it low, and they were putting up ball speeds like 202, 203 miles per hour, just kind of like flicking it out there, and the ground was giving it up, and I had a different approach when I went up against JJ. But, if he hit his good ball, I was getting my doors blown off. But interesting to say that. I wasn't in the top 36. So for me, like going into the next year to compete, like I wasn't even top 36. So I couldn't even get into these tour events. So I'm like, I'm just going to go overseas and go have some fun, and that's essentially what I did. Cause for me, like, and most of the people know that I was doing 100 exhibitions, 120 exhibitions a year, and that was kind of like my practice, like for a long drive for a really long time.
Well, I think it showed because you were and are one of the most consistent hitters. You're going to fill up the grid and you're going to put good shots in. So let's just touch briefly on what you just mentioned there, where Justin was significantly faster than you in that round of 16, but you made it to the round of 16. To get to the top 16 in the world shows you're obviously doing a lot of stuff right, in addition to having good speed. He just might have been faster. But what did you do? Like what separates you from other people that might be at your speed but aren't getting to that round?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a different format. The first format was 16 hitters and they took the top 6. And I knew that as kind of like, it's not a single elimination per se, it's a round robin, but it led up to heads up matches. And I knew if I can get through the round of that 16, to make the top 6, that, especially later on in the event, that people were going to get tight. And it worked out in my favor that I didn't even say slipped through the cracks because I had 750 points. I think that's what I had. But to get to the heads up matches, I went up against Will, who Will was like, couldn't lose, type of deal. And he got me on the last ball both times in our heads up matches. And then I wasn't eliminated from Worlds, which was cool. I had to go in a loser's bracket and went up against Mitch. And me and Mitch went back and forth. I won the first set, Mitch won the second set, and then I ended up winning the third, which Mitch Dobbin, who lost to Joe Miller in the round of 8 the year before. And then I went up against Jeff Flagg in the double elimination, heads up match. And, Jeff won the 2014 World Championships.
Excuse me for a second. I want to tell you real quick about my favorite training aid and a sponsor of the podcast, the Lag Shot. It's designed with what they call lag flex technology that'll help you to create and maintain more lag in your swing, which will give you better consistency and more speed, which we all want, right? But my favorite part is that you can go out and actually hit balls with it. It's a real club. They make a driver, a 7-iron, and a wedge. So you can incorporate it into your practice sessions to ingrain the better technique that it's teaching you. Once you try it, you'll see why I love it. Go to lagshotgolf.com/crush or click the link in the description below to get 15% off. lagshotgolf.com/crush.
So for me, it's a different psychology with double elimination formats and heads up matches. Like I can be slower, but I know that if I put a good number out there and you go 0 for your first 2 or 3, things change. And that's essentially for me, like when I went up against Justin in 2017, like I remember telling my dad, I'm like, I hope to God Justin lets me go first because I'm a 10-1 underdog. But if he lets me go first, I feel like I'm a 3-1 underdog just because I'll just throw them out there, And I remember my first ball was a 397. I'm not going to say it was a bunt, but it was like a floater. I was just trying to hit it in play and put a number up there where he'd have to, not have to swing hard, but he'd have to put a decent ball in play to beat me. But, like I said, I go back to watching like Tommy and Jeff Flagg just hitting low lineas, 120, 130 foot little tight draws that just rolled forever. And, you've been around a while, like even Steenberg in 2016 or 15, where he landed at like 360, rolled out to 420. So that grid's a little bit different. And then, when Maurice won it in 2017, you had to carry it 100 and, you had to put it 190 feet in the air with no spin and carry it 385 because that was all you were going to get. So, grid conditions matter, tournament conditions matter as far as structure. Like round robin, the way they have it now, the fastest guys are going to win, period. We can go back to last event in Utah when Greg Knoll will even tell you he had probably the worst 5 sets of his entire career, ends up hitting 3 out of 30 balls in play, but he hit 2 good balls when it mattered. And it's so top heavy with points that he got in with 2 first place, a 4th, and 2 OB sets, and then he comes back in the next round robin and goes 6 for 6 and hits 4 balls, or 6 balls over 400 yards. So
yeah, probably the second best set of all time.
Yeah, him and Miller, like we talked about it, and it almost happened twice with him. So, and at the round robins, the best hitters are going to be there at the end, or the fastest hitters are going to be there at the end. And, there's a reason why you see Justin James and Kyle Berkshire at every single event, and for a win. So, and those are my guys to win it this year. Like, they're the best hitters, period. And they've proven it since 2017. So, someone's going to have to knock them off the pedestal.
I really like the format where it is now. I'd make a couple changes, but it's always that argument of how do you reward people the most, by hitting the farthest ball or by being the most consistent hitter and trying to find some kind of middle ground. Because if you hit one ball that's like in, where was it? Fort Jackson in 2019, Joe Miller hit a ball that was like 60 yards past everybody else. I don't know if he just hit it perfect or it hit a spot or whatever, but it was the longest ball by a lot. But then if you only hit one good one, should you advance? I don't know, maybe. So it's that argument, right? I think the round robin is probably a pretty good blend of it all.
Yeah, I mean, you said we can mess around with like the point structure. Like I would like to see negative points. I know 0 is a good start, if they go OB, but if they started getting negative 50, negative 100 points, I think it'll put more of a premium on accuracy. And, at the end of the day, what they did last year with the round of 16, the final 16, and then it was just the final 8, 2 quarters, a semi and, the finals, like that was as exciting as it could be. So at the end of the day, you're literally fighting to get to the final 8, because then everything changes. It really truly changes. Anybody can win the world championships when it's down to the final 8, period. There's going to be favorites, but
the way that they jump into those shootouts, that's, like you said, it's so exciting. It keeps everybody, the competitor, really involved, really engaged. Your excitement level is high, but then also for the fan, it's quick and to the point. You know what's happening. It's a great way to go.
And I like to finish last event in Utah. I mean, we talked about Reed Russell and Colton Castro are the same hitter. I mean, granted, Reed's, 50, 60, 70 pounds bigger. I don't know how much bigger Reed is, but they're the same hitter. And when they get hot, they're tough to beat. They hit that big high draw, and they can produce close to 230 mile per hour ball speed. Now in tournaments, they're probably in the lower 220s, and we say that lower 220s, which is world-class speed. But I'm interested to see how the grid conditions are going to be this year compared to March, because if the grid conditions are similar to March, someone like Bryson DeChambeau has got a chance to win the World Championships if he gets his speeds back up. I know that we were working out in Dallas at his house a couple weeks ago, and he got up to 216 when Kyle went 236. So grid conditions matter. Look at someone like Dave Mobley, who's going to be significantly slower than Jeff Gavin and Eddie Fernandez. But you're going to see Mobley there at the end, and the guy like John Graves that no one really, he's under the radar per se, but you kind of know in the senior division who's going to be there, Zach Adams. But I like, there's no sleepers now. Like we've been watching this long enough. There might be someone like a Bryce Verplank that comes in that might make a final 8, but I find that hard to believe now that we've seen, a laundry list of events this year and who's there deep in tournaments.
Yeah, there are a lot of subtleties that because you've been in the sport at a high level for so long that other people wouldn't know if they just look kind of casually at long drive. But the conditions play a huge factor, and your equipment setup plays a huge factor. So like in Florida this year, I started off by hitting a draw, a little like kind of a mid-height draw, because that's just probably one of my favorite shot shapes. And it did terrible. The wind was knocking it down. It wasn't rolling at all. And then I got put in the loser's bracket right away. So I had to start hitting this higher cut. And then I was doing well. I was advancing. But it seems like a lot of times people who can make those adjustments quickly will make up the difference, and they'll keep advancing. So you brought up David Mobley, who's a great example of that, not only just because of his consistency with his swing, but he'll change his loft up, down, a bunch of degrees, and it changes shot shape, and he does a great job of adapting.
He's the best in the business when it comes to, that. And like I said, at the higher speeds, I think Justin James is the best in the business when it comes to being able to adapt to certain shots, high, low, draw, cut, using different setups, and that's, you don't see that very often anymore. You're kind of seeing guys, maybe they might change a gram weight here or two, but very rarely you're going to see guys make changes like inside of an event. They're going to stick with whatever they have at the beginning of the event. Maybe they might change lofts, but, Justin James makes modifications on the fly, and that's something that he's really good at. And like I said, Kyle doesn't miss the center of the club face. I mean, you talk about Mobley, who I believe is the best ball striker, best long driver as far as hitting certain shots. And you got Kyle Berkshire, who's can put up a session of 100 balls and average 228, 229 ball speed. So that means he's not missing the center of the club face, Yeah. So, and it's just a matter of him getting in a rhythm and because he's, just based off of ball speed and spin rates and landing angles or what have you, he's the best in the business, for a reason. And he consistently wins because he does hit the center of the club face at those speeds. But when you're going out as far as he's hitting it, then, OB sets do come into play. I don't care how good you are, When you're hitting it that far, OB sets are going to happen. And that's why, the final 8, just get to the final 8 and then, let it play out from there, especially this year.
It would be really interesting to, I think everybody is a little bit afraid of it, but to go with those negative points for an OB set, that'd be scary. But I like the idea in that you really, like what Landon Gentry did for a long time. He would put a shot in and then build on it and build on it and build on it. And like Phyllis Meddy did that in 2018 or 17. But like she would put a shot out there in the finals and a little further, and I think it's really exciting to watch. And it's relatable for people who are out on the golf course and want to be able to hit it far, but want to keep it in play too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out in Japan. Oh yeah. 6 balls they're getting. They're taking 3 and then averaging them out. And that girl, I can't remember. It started with an A. She didn't miss the grid. She was like 29 out of 30.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was sick. I'll think of her name, but yeah, I'd be curious to see if we had that type of format. But I don't necessarily care for that format. For me, people want to see the longest hitters on the planet, and I'm just being selfish when I say I'd like to see heads-up matches and double elimination because I know I'm slow, and I feel honestly it's harder to win those types of tournaments at double elimination formats. You don't have room for mistake. And you got guys like Jason Zubak that won 4 years in a row with pressure's on right away. And Jamie Sedlowski went over his first 11 when he won the first world championship, and he had to get a ball in play in 08, and he ended up going through the losers bracket, hit like 11 rounds. And sometimes that pressure actually is better for you, and guys like Justin James and Kyle Berkshire, they're better when the pressure is on too, so I don't think that format necessarily hurts them or benefits them. They're going to do well, but certain guys, you're going to see a lot of the guys that are a lot faster have struggles getting deep in tournaments, running deep, so.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the pressure there. I forget who I was talking with. Maybe it was Mobley down in Florida. But like I said, I got put into the losers bracket, and I had to keep winning to advancing. And that, it kind of like flips a switch in your brain where you're no longer really like trying to hit a certain shot or play this or that. You're just up there trying to survive.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, and it makes you perform better. And that's one of the harder things that I think for tournament golf or for long drive, because it is inherently not like a threat sport, that it's hard to get into that fight or flight kind of scenario. If you and I were fighting and you were coming at me, fight or flight, like it's fully engaged. But if I just have to hit a golf ball, sometimes it's a little harder to get into that stressed situation.
That round of 16 is going to be intense. Like last year, there was so much energy. And I said last year was my favorite world championships. And I think a lot of it just had to do with the tournament structure and watching the guys. Like, there's no doubt those guys were 5 miles per hour average faster, than everybody else. That was, even though we were missing some key components, guys like, Tim Burke, Joe Miller, Maurice Allen, Mark Costello, a couple guys from overseas, James Tate, Neil Rosberg. We can just Jordan Brooks. So the list can go on. Bry Roberts, who will be here next year. Like, there is probably 8 to 10 key guys. Thorin Van Zyl. I don't want to leave anybody out because we're ripping them off. Guys that are around the world. But that final 16 last year was sick. That was really fun to call. And as I said, at the end of the day, the 2 best hitters on the planet were heads up against each other, and Kyle beat him by 4 yards. So I think it was 422 to 418. So Martin was right there too. He made the the semifinals, and Martin ended up, at that time was the fastest guy on the planet, on a launch monitor at 231.9. And then Kyle came a couple weeks later, and ended up going 233.4. But, Kyle's the fastest and the baddest dude on the planet right now. So, he's definitely the favorite going into this. But, guys like Ryan Gregnall. Gregnall's won in Canada. Some of these guys, they get a taste of winning. They know what it's like to win, and it's just a matter of performing, under the lights, or if we're going to be under the lights or not. But if that ground's hard, Bryson DeChambeau's got a chance to win it, period. I know he's our boy now. What he did last year was awesome. And it was interesting, because Brian Ziegler, his caddy, sat next to me in the booth for 3 straight days listening to what we had to say. And Bryson's biggest weakness per se was the fact that, he's almost at neutral, +1, +2 up on a golf ball at impact, and he needed to be like +4 or +5. And but he hit the perfect shot when he needed to, and he went through that round of 16, which wasn't easy to get to the final 8. So if the ground's hard, Bryson's got a chance to win. And then someone like Brandon Flynn, I mean, Flynn's a stud, you know, and he's starting to get faster and faster, like inch up, yard by yard, or like mile per hour by mile per hour.
Yeah.
Like I think he's probably closer to 220 now. So someone like Brandon Flynn wouldn't surprise me if he ended up winning the World Championships as well.
Mm-hmm. You hear a lot of people say that there has to be like a minimum speed that you're at. And then if there's a maximum speed as well, like maybe the ball doesn't perform quite as well at, you know, if your speed is too high. Do you think that's true? Or do you think that's just that if you're at that higher speed, maybe you're spinning it more? What do you think?
I think Tim Burke explained it best back in the day. He goes, I got to slow down to get the most out of the golf ball. And then you look at someone like Maurice, who won in 2018, with 212 ball speed. He was flying it farther than everybody that was faster than him. So I feel like he got the most out of the golf ball. Maurice was hitting it straight too. You know, I know that AMT ball didn't fly very well if you're hitting draws or cuts. Like you almost had to hit it straight in order to get the most out of that golf ball. But yeah, like, I mean, it seemed like Justin Moose, certain guys around the 210, 212 got the most out of that golf ball. And interesting to see like what the new golf ball that's coming out. I don't know if you've announced it or not, what ball is going to be, but interested to see, you know, the ball flight, the characteristics. If it's a softer compression, obviously more balls are going to be in play. Dispersion is going to be tighter. And it really just comes down to landing angles in the ground, whether it's hard, soft. They'll figure it out. And like to say, the guys that are the fastest, they're going to be, I mean, it's going to be a breeze the first 2 days, two or 3 days. I mean, they can cruise, they can coast. And I like the way it's structured too. 5 sets, hitting 30 balls, you know, it's not going to be that stressful for these guys. And they'll be able to learn a lot those first couple of days, because they're just going to get in just based off of pure speed alone, unless the ground is like seriously like concrete, you know.
Yeah, it seems to me like in Mesquite, you often have, and I've said this before, the wind down and right or in and right. And so that higher ball flight that you talked about earlier, really carrying it really far, would you change that if you're hitting in to the wind, or you just still try to take that same game plan?
Dave Mobley is a perfect example. 2011 was so much slower than, not so much slower, but slower than Pasta Man. And like he just hit a ball 360, rolled out to like 459. And right when he hit it, he knew it too. He hit a flat cut. It's probably 130, 140 feet. Guys like Tom Pepper hit the same type of shot. And he knew it, you know, and that's the beauty of long drive, because you can win in any shape and size, and speed does matter. But like when you get deep in these tournaments and you're consistent, guys like, I mean, we can rip off names all day. Brian Kelly's really good, a good hitter that's always there. He's not going to light up the radar detectors per se. Jacob Galladay's the same. A lot more people are going to come into play based off the ground conditions. You know, I know I did really well in Mesquite in 2009, 2011 when we were hitting into headwinds, and it was just because I was hitting the ball straight and I fighted it well into those type of headwinds. I wasn't, you know, overspinning the golf ball, and, you know, equipment does matter. Spin rates do matter. And, you know, and that's, you know, being a professional, you got to be able to hit all different, well, at least try to hit different types of shots, or at least have a game plan. And that's something that Bobby Peterson, even though he's the owner of the sport, is really good at, you know, teaching his players, you know, being able to adapt to different types of conditions based off of, you know, the condition of the grid, the format, whatever it may be.
What's your approach when you go into it? Are you picking different shot shapes like you just said? Are you swinging all out? Or, you know, what are you doing?
Some depending on the conditions, yeah. I mean, but for me, like I know I'm slower. You know, I got to hit a lot of balls in play and let the ground be your friend, or just hitting a bunch of balls in play. Like I might, you know, hit 6 out of 6 in play, but I spun a couple of them, then I hit it. Throughout the tournament, just in a speed session, there's certain things that you focus on, and you kind of know right away if you hit one good or not. And if you hit one good and the number comes back a different number, you're like, or a number that you're not expecting, then you have to make an adjustment then. You know, a lot of times for me, it was more, I was lifting a little bit. I was trying to lift, so I was maybe hitting a little thin on the club face, and I was still hitting them in play. But for me, it's almost like I told myself, like, be patient at the top of my backswing and try to almost like sky the golf ball. Like I'm not trying to hit on top of the club, but in baseball terms, try to get, if it's on a tee, try to get through 3 baseballs and try to hit it over the second baseman's head. So, you know, take an inside approach, whether I'm swinging out 2 degrees, which I know I'm swinging to the shortstop's head 2 degrees. Like, it doesn't matter how hard I tried. I was still pulling a degree or two left instead of 3 or 4 or 5 degrees, you know? And then when you get in competition, you have to train yourself to slow down, because you're going to be faster, significantly faster. I've always said that, like, when I was pitching and we had the radar, you know, the radar gun out in right field, and my last couple pitches and warm-ups before a hitter came up, I'd be like 89, 90 miles per hour. And I'm like, man, I threw the crap out of that golf ball. This is how long I've been in golf now, that baseball. And then, you know, a hitter comes up and the first pitch is 93. And I'm like, there was no difference, you know? So when there's, you know, a golf ball on a tee and it matters, guys are going to be faster. So it's being able to control your emotions. And that's something that we keep saying the same guys are there at the end, not only because they're the fastest, but they're the most experienced and they know how to win in critical conditions and under any type of condition.
One of the things that I think, underappreciated for the last few years, but now I very much appreciate, is the necessity to have a really high ball count going into a tournament, getting a lot of reps in, like really, you know, because I would spend a lot of time in the gym and I would maybe mix it like 50-50 gym and hitting balls. And now it's a lot more towards hitting balls. And I'm really benefiting from it. But you've seen that over the years, that usually the people who are performing the best at these tournaments are the ones who are allocating their energy resources, or whatever you want to call it, to getting a ton of reps in at that higher speed. So it's just interesting to see the differences in that. And like you said, you know, you've hit millions of golf balls, and it's usually in front of people because you're entertaining them. So I think that would probably carry over in a really productive way, where then when you're on the tee box, you're already used to people watching you and everything like that.
Well, I always said charity or corporate exhibitions are like throwing BP fastballs. When you get accustomed to throwing BP fastballs 100, 120 times a year, you slow down. It doesn't matter how hard you train, you know, per se. Like, I mean, my legs were shot. When I showed up to Worlds, it was more of like, I wanted to say that I got to Worlds for however many times. And if I slipped through the cracks and I ran well, great. But like, my focus more was to stay healthy than to train for speed. And last year I lost so much weight that I ended up training for speed the last like 8 weeks, and it was fun. And, you know, people that are watching this for the first time, there's a reason why those TrackMan and Foresight, devices have like 20 different tiles, because you might be focusing on 4 tiles, you know, that spit out numbers in the beginning, but by a ball 150, 200, you know, those numbers, you're looking at something completely different. And 1 mile per hour means a lot, you know, or 2 mile per hour, because there's so many times in sets where we're within 6 inches of each other, a yard or 2 yards or 3 yards. And that's why there's a premium of being a little bit faster and hitting more balls in play. And I've watched Kyle break 6 or 7 of his own records. And it's on like ball like 200, you know, 180, 200. Like, he has a specific routine to ramp up speed. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 4. He's got a 30-40 ball window where he's going full throttle, and he knows exactly what he's looking for. And he's been able to, you know, break records because of that.
So let's talk a little bit about, you know, your background and how that is similar to a lot of other long drivers in terms of being a pitcher. You see a lot of people, Justin James, Tim Burke, I believe, was a pitcher, right? Mm-hmm. Why do you think that's so prevalent in long drive?
Well, I'll dumb this down because I'm not that smart. I mean, kinetic sequencing, you can talk about it better than I can, but throwing a baseball or pitching is eerily similar to swinging a long drive club. You know, just the takeaway, just focusing on the inside part of your right hip, getting your hands to set at the top in golf is kind of like your lead foot landing in baseball, and letting your body catch up after that. You know, mechanics were extremely important for me in baseball, and I thought in baseball terms. I really did. And Lance Reeder told me something one day at an event in 2008. We were at the Palms, and the way he said it was very similar to think fastball, hit fastball, like in baseball terms. So and right when I heard that, which wasn't in those terms, but I translated it into that, I didn't go OB for 12 years. So, you know, and it's just, I think in baseball terms, you know, like hit it over the second baseman's head, get your hands to set, which is like my lead foot. You know, if you're thinking fastball and you're getting a changeup, your weight transfer is you're lunging towards the target per se. Your hands are late. You can foul it off, or you're just going to hit your high banana, you know, cuts, you know, that go OB right. So, yeah, think fastball, hit the inside part of the golf ball, and hit it over the second baseman's head. That's how I kind of thought.
So when you're relating it to baseball, do you feel more like you're hitting a baseball or you're pitching one?
It's a combination of both. I think the takeaway is eerily similar to pitching, and then the downswing is pitching as well. But there's some form of hitting too. Like I'm thinking hitting inside half, with my hands. I'm forcing my hands inside.
We've seen a lot of other baseball players that come over that were not pitchers, and I think there's a tendency to kind of hold on as you're going through, probably because of the technique in baseball.
Yeah,
but I've always thought that a pitcher had the advantage because of the release of the hands. And in my opinion, having like a fast release of the hands and arms, that's probably the most important part for speed. Yeah, there's the kinematic sequence and ground up and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't have any hand release or hand speed, you're not going to hit it anywhere. But then you have a lot of like amateur hitters or just recreational golfers that they're really afraid of doing that move because they think they're going to chunk it or, early cast or whatever. But it's not the case.
Yeah, so you're practically taking that right hand and throwing it at the inside half of the golf ball as hard as you can, per se, and that was the hardest thing for me when I was working on speed, like certain things with Rick Silva. He's one of my business partners in one of my companies, but like once he started explaining to me in baseball terms, everything changed, and I'm like, dude, you're way too smart for me per se in this aspect of business or golf that I don't know what you're saying. I have no idea. And when he did, it's kind of funny. I was on the quad and I was 137 miles per hour, just full throttle, and he ends up setting up gears. Took him 30 minutes to set up gears, gets me on gears and take 3 swings. And he's like, you're done. And I'm like, okay. What's up? And he goes, he looked at one number. It's like my body was leaning over the golf ball or whatever. Like the pressure was like 13 degrees. And he's like, you need to be back on your heels at like 30 degrees. And he's like, stand like you're hitting a baseball. And I stood like I'm hitting a baseball. And he goes, okay, swing. And I was 142 on the first swing. And I'm like, dude, stop. No. I was like, you gassed this thing up. And it was just because I told him I couldn't feel my legs, and for me, I got in such a bad habit doing these charity events where I just got in a habit. It wasn't even a bad habit. I was hitting a bunch of balls in play. I was like a robot, but, and it slowed me down immensely. But yeah, being able to, like small little things can go a long way. And we'll revert back to 5 minutes ago when we talked about those numbers on a screen. They mean a lot. They really, truly do. And when you figure those numbers out, you have a humongous advantage, and we talked about having launch monitors on the tee box, which I don't believe they're going to do this year. But a lot of the guys were just like kind of looking at spin rates, you could probably say it better than I could because you probably mentioned it on the podcast before, but I could care less if the guys had launch monitors on the tee box. I knew my numbers, and I've hit so many golf balls. I can just tell by how it felt in my hands at impact and ball flight. I'm like, okay, I got to do something different, so, but I think a lot of guys are looking at maybe ball speed, but I think spin. I think they're looking at spin more than anything.
Yeah, I would imagine spin. They'd probably, depending on what unit on the tee, they're probably looking at path and face and stuff just to make sure that they're carrying it over. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. So I've only, I have the Flight Scope Mevo Plus now. I've had it for a few weeks. But for that time period, I feel like I've made great progress because I can instantly correlate like, oh, this shot feels this way. And then I check the results and it actually is or is not. And it's, for me, there's a huge difference between having that unit and being able to train on it like every day versus when I go to Bobby Peterson's or, somewhere else and I'm hitting on a track, man, that's like testing, training versus testing. Mm-hmm. So then you get that feel. And then when I'm up on the tee box competing, I know like, oh, that was probably these numbers and that was probably those numbers. So you quickly know, but I think there are some things in the works that I don't know if it'll be at Worlds or if it's been announced it'll be at Worlds or anything like that. But there's some exciting stuff coming. So
yep. Looking forward to it, whatever it may be.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll be nice to see with the new ball, the new everything, the grid conditions, all that'll be very exciting. So
yeah, I mean, for me, it's about the grid conditions. That's really what I'm interested in. That's because a lot of people are going to come into play if the ground's hard. If it's a carry grid, then I mean, it's like I'm going to tell you who's going to be there. I'll pick 8 of the 12. Like you get 12 guys to pick from, 8 of them are going to be in the final 8. Out of the 12. No, there's no doubt. Yep.
Were you surprised last year that Bryson made it as far as he did, or did you have like an inside track with him before?
the kid doesn't miss the center of the club face. He knows how to fly the golf ball, and he's got his landing angles. You know, like, I mean, the kid's a stud. He's one of the best lawn drivers on the planet, let alone golfer. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I wasn't surprised at all. He's going to put a lot of balls in play. I mean, the guy literally just played in the Ryder Cup. So, like, he's going to have adrenaline instead of pressure. You know, like, there's a different type. And you just watched him progressively throughout the week just go from 212 to 214 to 215 to 216. And then crunch time, final 16, he went 219. It's like the guy can thrive under pressure. And he got better. He got better as the event went on, and his attack angle went up too. It went from 2 to 4. And yeah, I mean, the kid's good. He's really good. Then he went 221 not that long ago, like at the beginning of the year with Kyle, with Bridgestone golf ball. So I think he really truly has a chance to win, and he's healthy. He's healthy now. So,
and certainly those speed numbers are impressive, even for a long driver, but considering that he's, one of the best tournament golfers alive, that makes it even more impressive. But it also kind of goes to the point that we were talking about. Is there a minimum speed required, and is there a point of diminishing returns? So if he's going 220 and somebody's hitting against is going 230, maybe the 220 ball that he hits just perfect, and then they hit like a 225 mishit, maybe the 220 is better.
It matters when it gets to the final 8. It really does, So guys that are in the 225s that are putting balls in play in the round of 16 are going to advance to the final 8. It really comes down to the final 8. It really does. And that's what makes it exciting, because if they have, I've seen, the format where it's double elimination, you have to beat someone twice. Like, it's going to be almost impossible, not impossible, but like I said, there's a 90% chance that Kyle Berkshire will win. If you have to go up against him, I don't see people, your Justin James, guys that can do it. Like I said, but the odds are heavily stacked in Kyle's favor if you have to beat that kid twice. When it's a single elimination format final 8, those odds go down. Everybody else comes into play, and it's a matter of being hot as well. And guys like Colton Casto and Reed Russell and Ryan Gregnall, they're going to be tough, if they have the confidence and they're hitting balls in play, because, they haven't been as accurate as other hitters, but they're plenty fast enough. And if they catch a good ball late, they can win.
Yeah, and so speaking of those 3 guys in particular, like we just saw up in Utah, a lot of them are, or a number of them are momentum based. Like, if they start putting good shots in, they're just going to keep putting those good shots in, and that's really exciting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, realistically, I feel like there's 12 people that can win the world championships. And I've said it plenty of times. They know what they need to do to get they got to get to finally.
Mm-hmm,
so
for sure. Mm-hmm. Are there any underdogs? Any people you've seen? Like, I think it was Chance Olson was hitting it great in Utah. Any people you've been really surprised by this year?
I mean, Chance seems like he could handle the moment. Like, he went up against the best hitters in the world, and he did very well. I don't know if Bryce is feeling better. I know that he had to withdraw Bryce for Plank, but I mean, Josh Koch, Brandon Flynn. I mean, they're not. Mm-hmm. They're going to be there. They're going to be there if they're healthy. Yeah. Martin Borgmeyer. I mean, we haven't even mentioned. Martin. Martin is a guy that he's made some changes over the last couple events where he was nice and laid back and relaxed and talking on the tee box, and that's the Martin Borgmeyer I like to see. I think in the beginning of the year he was trying to conserve energy, and that didn't benefit him because he put himself in the hole where it ended up eliminating him super early in tournaments. But he's won an event this year, and he looked really good the first 2 round robins in Utah, and ended up going OB when it was a single elimination type of setup. So, guys like Martin Borgmeyer, Colton Casto, the guys that you kind of worry about, like, us sitting in the booth, it's like, well, why aren't we picking them to win? And I think a lot of it has to do that there's an OB set in play. Not saying that everybody else isn't susceptible of going OB. I've watched Brandon Flynn go OB, and you would never think that he would do it just based off of how, fluid his swing is and efficient. But, these guys go out of bounds and they're human beings. They get nervous, and go 0 for your first 2 or 3 when it's crunch time. Anything's possible. Scotty Pearman. We haven't even mentioned Scotty. There's so many guys. Like I said, give me a laundry list of guys. Scotty Pearman is so tough. He's such a tough hitter.
And it's really cool how, so I think it was the last podcast that was out was with Scotty or 2 ago, but it was really cool to know how he climbed up through the amateur ranks and just dominated there, and then got into the pro side and instantly became, like, last year he was the PLDA Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. I don't think when you started, I'm sure, and I don't know if when I started there was any amateur long drive really, but he's had a great route that way, and then now he's one of the top guys. So it's awesome to see people climb up that way, and I wonder who there will be in the amateur side this year that we'll then be looking at in future years.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Cody Billinghurst came in and did pretty well, in his first couple events. But yeah, I mean, Scotty Perriman knows how to win. So guys like that can run deep in a tournament, regardless if he was the amateur world champion, he's been in crunch time where it matters. There's a title on the line, and he's done it twice. And I'm wearing purple. I'm thinking of him now. Like, I'm surprised we bring him up earlier, but he knows he's a winner. He's tough, and he hits it high too. So if it's a carry grid, the only thing that concerns me about guys that hit high draws in Mesquite is that you talked about it's more of a left to right grid. So guys that are more susceptible to hitting a cut, someone like a Josh Koch, I feel like they have a slight advantage, later on in the event, especially if your prototypical ball flight is going to be a high draw. You're going to fight that wind a little bit. So
let me just say, because you mentioned people like Brandon Flynn, you've seen him go OB. I went OB, I think twice up in Utah, which was surprising. But I think part of maybe when he has gone OB, and then what I think would happen with me is that as we're getting faster, there's a different ball flight tendency, and whether it's a technical change or just you're releasing faster and learning then what the ball flight is going to do at that higher speeds is critical. So we've still got a couple weeks before Worlds, and I'm sure everybody's fine tuning and getting used to those speeds and getting ready for those conditions.
Yeah, it's hard to. The adrenaline's a huge factor, and I've practiced a lot in that the D60 D30 plus, the LD30, the Patterson shaft that a lot of guys went to, like Kyle went to it in 2019, has been extremely successful. It's just there's that little bit of adrenaline that it's just. I would feel more comfortable with a stronger setup, because someone like yourself, if you had the LD60, like, you're not going OB. You're not going OB with that setup. But at the end of the day, that LD30 it's a better shaft if you're in control of your own body, and the numbers prove it. It's produced the fastest ball speeds of all time. Even the D10. I mean, it's crazy, but if you go out and you have one ball to hit and play, I can guarantee you're not hitting the D10 or the D30. You're going to hit a D60. That's the D60, the 70, whatever. Like, that's like a light pole. Like someone like Justin James, that's going to hit a 65, 70 gram shaft that's 3-4X. Your dispersion's going to be significantly tighter, and it's going to eliminate more OB sets. So that's the thing that you have. That comes down to just repetition, hitting tens of thousands of golf balls to get used to that, and being able to compete with that shaft in tournaments, under pressure, because OB sets are happening. I think a lot of it has to do with just guys not getting their hands to set at the top, and that shaft is it's not tough to swing, but it's tough to swing with a lot of pressure, So
yeah. Let me probe a little bit deeper there. When you say set at the top, I've heard David Mobley say the same thing, like high hands. What exactly do you mean, and what's the benefit of that?
Trying to get your body to pause for just a second, it's more about your lower extremities moving too fast, I always revert back to baseball. It's like you're lunging a little bit, you gotta be patient, let the ball travel deep, in baseball terms, and really focus on that inside hip in your hands, because if you take the glove back too fast, then maybe you lose your hands a little bit and you don't know where your hands are setting, and the bottom half's moving way too fast, your brain's moving. And that's when you start seeing these crazy duck hooks, or, these high banana fades, or you're starting off line 300 feet, like you're hitting a ball. Like, he just hit that ball 400 yards, but 300 yards of it was right, So, pressure busts pipes, and guys that can handle that type of pressure with a 235, 240 CPM, let alone a 190. Holy cow.
So does that slow you down though? Like, if you take it back and you pause too much, are you then, I would imagine, at some point you'd slow down.
You have to watch video of yourself, because when you think you're paused at the top, you're not, you're not. You can it's just like a millisecond, but that millisecond can mean centering it with the toe closed, or square at impact, or open a degree. If you're swinging left 4 degrees and your face is open 1 or whatever, it's a lot easier to be more neutral on your attack if you can get your hands instead, or have your body intact. Like I said, for me, it's the right hip. I focused on the right hip, try to keep it on the inside part of my right hip as long as I possibly can. Just get a little pause at the top. And like I said, for me, like I focus on my right elbow as well, cause you feel like a chicken wing, but when you try to drop that elbow back in the slot, my numbers were like drastically better, drastically being like a mile and a half. And especially, at these speeds, it's a big number, but yeah, it's crazy. Like my fastest ball last year, I don't want to throw myself under the bus. Like I'm not a professional, was 202.8 miles per hour on my 227th golf ball, in a practice session. And it was just everything that I talked about just synced up perfectly. And I was tired, but my body was working. My hands were relaxed, focused on certain things on my takeaway. My takeaway is critical. And I even tried to get more of a, rotational, more of a turn, and focus on that inside part of the right hip, and the numbers were better. So
to me, that kind of thing is really interesting. And I've seen it in other people like Bobby Peterson. Actually, I was down when I was living with him for a little while. He hit his fastest ball ever after at least 100 balls. And I'm sure everybody's kind of experienced that, but I feel like what that indicates is that there's so much more potential where you're making some change. Because if you're running sprints, you're not going to run your fastest sprint on your 227th sprint. There's something that's different. Obviously, your technique changed a little bit that made it more efficient. You just squared it up perfectly, whatever it may be. But I think you have a lot more potential if you're doing that. And there's also, so the only exercise I can really think of that's kind of the same way is a kettlebell swing, where I always encourage my clients to use a heavier kettlebell when they're swinging, because it will change their technique to use the bigger muscle groups. They'll be more efficient with it because they have to. But if you're using a light one, you can just use your arms, your shoulders, whatever. And I've got to imagine there's a similar thing there when you're hitting and you get super tired and you've already gone as fast as you can, but then somehow you go faster.
It's constant motion, For me, I'd hit a golf ball in the simulator. I'd go pick it up. I'd put it on a tee, and I would do the same walk. I would pace. I would do a circle, and I would walk back into the golf ball, and then just go. So I was constantly moving, and I wear the Whoop just to kind of see where my heart rate is. And no better person to explain, where his heart rate is more than Kyle Berkshire. I mean, when I say he's got levels to his training, I mean, he's looking at his heart rate. He's looking at his club speed or ball speed with a with a 45-inch driver. And when he gets to a certain number, he's like, all right, when I'm at 222, 223 ball speed with a 45-inch driver, then I'm going to progress to the 48-inch driver. And then I'm going to look and see my numbers from 150 to 152. And then I'm going to listen to a different song. And then I'm going to chug a Monster Energy drink. And then I'm going to see where my heart rate is. And then I'm going to get to level 3. And then once I get to right around 155, 156, he might be able to hit those 230 numbers, but it's just like game on. He's listening to a certain type of music, and his body is moving efficiently at ball 150, in a session. But there's constant movement. He might take a little bit of a break, but a little bit of a break might be only 2.5, 3 minutes, where he just, hits that reset button. So, but yeah, I got stronger as the game went on when I pitched too. I would be 88 to 91, 92 the first couple innings, but the last couple innings I'd be, 91 to 94, 95, 96. So I got better as the game went on, for sure.
I wonder if changing your warm up would allow you to come out faster, or if that's just an inherent part. Like, do you have to go through that number of reps?
I was trying to survive. For me, it was about survival, because when I first got into the sport, it was double elimination formats. So I wouldn't hit that much. I wouldn't hit as much. I would get loose to where I felt good. And I was just trying to put a lot of balls in play, and go back and just hit 7 irons. I was just trying to stay in my swing intact. I'd actually swing a weighted club, but I wasn't swinging a weighted club for speed. I wasn't just trying to, but it was more of just like my arc and my tempo and kind of like a hitter does, before they're on the on-deck circle. They get a weighted back. They're not swinging as hard as they can with it, because I know you can explain it better than I that it's not beneficial to try to swing a weighted club as hard as you can. But I was just constantly just trying to stay loose and having a nice fluid swing. I know Bobby Wilson used to say, like, he would only train with 7 irons, like with speed with 7 irons. And there's a reason why he's one of the best ball strikers of all time and has X amount of world championships as well. Consistency and accuracy is critical. And for me, I always felt like my first ball of the set was always my best ball. Why, I don't know. I think I didn't have that many expectations. So I just put a nice swing on the golf ball and probably was my fastest ball speed and, launch and spin and all of the above. It's really hard not to go full throttle when you're standing on a tee box, but the first ball was always normally my biggest number.
We're back.
We're back. God, your smile was just perfect. You had a perfect smile on your face the entire time.
Well, just to finish the thought on that, because we got cut off there, but I would imagine a big part of the reason why your first ball was your best is because you're a performer and you've been entertaining. You've done that your whole life, whether in baseball, outings and exhibitions, and then a lot of competitions. You're used to putting on a show and performing when it matters.
Yeah, well, I know we hadn't touched on it yet, but yeah, to get called out by the 45th president of the United States was interesting. That was the last time I had that was just, it's an event that I had done for so many years. I was on Man of the Year for Leukemia Lymphoma Society. So a foundation that meant a lot to me and my family. My little cousin Tatum was diagnosed with leukemia back in 2011, and she had her treatments at Arnold Palmer in Orlando, and they stayed at the Ronald McDonald House, and she's good to go, like 14-year-old superstar now. But I'm at that event just hanging out, and I own a software company now where we were just talking about the software. And I thought that the GM of the golf course was talking about the president of Trump Golf. And he's like, president's on 9, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'll introduce you. Didn't think anything of it. And I just had my back to the cart path. And it was obviously President Trump. And we started talking about Long Drive, and he said that he had Bryson there a couple of weeks before that, and he asked if I could hit it farther than him, and I said there's no cussing on this, but I was like I would blow his doors off, I'd hit it farther than him, whatever I said. And he asked if I was loose, and I was just hitting 2 irons on the range, and I'm like, I'm loose. And he goes, well, let's see if you can hit the 17th green from here. And I'm like, where the 17th green, how far is that? And someone said it was 411 yards. And I just flat out said, I can't hit it 411 yards. He goes, who cares? Go get your driver. So I run to my golf cart that's, 200 yards away. I get in the golf cart and my left leg just starts it's just out of mind of its own. I'm like, oh my God, I have so much adrenaline. I'm like, this dude being the president is calling me out right now. He's calling me out. And to make a really long story short, we had to move some carts because I needed to put our tornado tee, on a tight enough surface to where I was able to even put a ball on a tee because I had a ton of adrenaline. What I didn't know that it was 355 yards to actually carry it there, and we were downwind, and it was a little downhill, and it was maybe 10 mile per hour downwind, and I center punched it, and I hit it on the green on the first ball, and if you go back and watch the video, it almost hit the maintenance guy on the green, and he radioed up saying hey, if this guy's trying to hit the green, he almost hit me, tell him to stop. So you hear people saying, hold up before I hit my second ball. And I center punched my second ball too. And I hit it actually probably 2 or 3 yards farther where I carried it, hit it and went into the water on the back side of the green. And then, Trump's just like, you're done. You can't hit it any better than that. So the moral of that story was that I was in complete control of my body for that 0.9 seconds from when I pulled the trigger to when I hit the center of, hit the golf ball. So, but that adrenaline was actually fun. And I told Trump that I hadn't had that type of adrenaline in 10, 15 years. And he just said, you hit the crap out of that golf ball. That was impressive. And I was like, yeah.
That's awesome.
It was cool, and
now if Trump retells the story, how many yards past you did he hit it?
He just drove past me. He just drove it past. No.
Yeah.
About 700 yards. But what was funny was that he played with the GM and Anna Kournikovas' brother later. He was going to hit the Trump 9. So he played his 9 holes and went on the Trump 9. And Anna Kournikovas' brother, Alan and Johnny Apporti at the end of the tournament said that he was talking about that, how impressive it was where he practically, he did. He called me out. And I knew that he did. So if you see the video, I said a couple expletives while I was talking to him, just kind of in the entertainer mode. But that was interesting. That was a lot of fun. Obviously something that I will never forget. And I've hit from since then, because I go out there and it's fun to go out and play golf at that course. It's a fun place. to play.
You probably literally can't get a bigger or a more intense setting than that. President of the United States calling you out to hit a long drive, that's as good as it gets.
I didn't have to think about it. It's like kind of like, hey, do you want to go skydiving right now? And you don't have time to think. You're like, okay, it's either yes or no. And for me, like if someone told me 2 weeks before that you're going to hit a couple golf balls for the president of the United States, probably would have thought about it. Might have lost maybe a little bit of sleep. But I couldn't prepare it any better. I was ready for that moment, for the 15 years that I had entertained or performed on a world championship stage. And I always go back to thanking Art Sellinger for giving us that platform. Long drive's a hobby, like I thought it was a hobby at a certain point in time where I'm like, hey, listen, like I can't technically make this a career. And one, there was guys that were better than me and I made my career out of raising money and entertaining. And, lawn drive for me was just, I wanted to get to the world championships so I can say I've been to the world championships X amount of times when I was giving my background, at these charity events. And now, like I said, this is more of a victory lap for me. Like if I can get through day 1 and 2, that would be a success. Just put a bunch of balls in play and hopefully maybe get to the round of 32. But like, I don't have any expectations whatsoever, but to not say any cuss words, on the live telecast this year on YouTube. So,
well, good luck.
I think we'll be okay. I think we're all right.
Let's talk a little bit about the mental game since you kind of mentioned it there and we've talked a little bit about it, but, I feel like that's an underrated component for a lot of people in long drive because they just think, oh, you're hitting the ball far, but there's so much more to it. So are there things over the years that you've done as far as meditation or a mental routine or anything like that, visualization?
I think just staying healthy is the most important thing because if you're not healthy, then you're compensating for something else. So for me, like 2009, I started going to Troy Van Biesen, who he had Tiger at one point, Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth. He's got Scotty Scheffler. I mean, Mitch Dobbins. Some of the long drive guys go to him, but for me, it was more about maintenance and staying healthy. And I've said it a couple times. Pressure busts pipes. People perform under pressure. They struggle under pressure. And for me, like I got to the world championships, and it was just like I'm just putting a ball on a tee and I'm swinging and trying to hit the center of the club face. So I hadn't had as much adrenaline per se in my body until we finally got on the TV rounds. Like that was fun. Like that 3 minutes against Justin went by really quick, and I missed that. And I was like, man, like maybe if I didn't do as many exhibitions and I focused on my bottom half of my body and doing something a little bit different, I feel like I could have been a guy that would have been if I trained a 208 to 210 guy. Been efficient and had opportunities to put myself in positions to win. But, I'm 41 now. And then they say that you got guys like Eddie Fernandez that's putting up 220 ball speed at 51 miles per hour. You got Jeff Gavin that's, in and around the same number. So, age does play a role. But for me, I'm 180 pounds now. I'm not 225. So, and I like being 180, 185 pounds. But for me, it's just like anything else. It's hard to compete if you're not healthy. So, yeah. Health is extremely important.
Absolutely. So let's kind of finish with maybe can you give a couple tips for people who are just getting started in long drive or who are recreational golfers who want to hit it further?
Hit the center of the club face. It's that simple, and I don't know if, you talk to guys like Bryson and Kyle about stretching. For me, like I'm not the mad scientist per se or like Bobby Peterson, but for me, like being flexible, especially with my hips meant a lot. I mean, my hamstrings, you tell me to touch my toes, I don't even think I can touch my shins, but, I was always flexible in the hips and core strength and leg strength. Like, look at someone like Justin James. I mean, even like yourself, like your base it's crazy, but Justin James uses the ground, uses his legs, strong, and, having a strong core is extremely important, but for me, even in baseball, I wasn't nowhere near the strongest guy, but for me, I was 175 pounds throwing 96 miles per hour. So you can explain that better than most. And we talked about Landon Calling on the broadcast in Utah. The guy was 5'7", 150 pounds, came in third in the world at the World Championships against Jamie Sedlowski, who's, 5'11", 6 foot, 165, 70 pounds. And then you got guys like Mike Dobbin, who's 6'9", 300. So if you want to compete, how do I say it? Size doesn't matter. It does somewhat, But speed matters. Be fast.
So like in the pitching world, you were kind of, I would say, very similar to Kyle, where Kyle certainly started off and, he's developed a lot more muscle and fitness and everything, but, not in terrific shape when he started, but he was very fast. And, not to say that you weren't in great shape, but you said you're 175 pounds, so you're not like huge, but throwing 96 is really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I was in baseball shape. I had great mechanics. Like that was something that my dad was just all about, mechanics and just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, my senior year in high school, we had 3 first-round draft picks and 8 professionals. Wow. We've been doing the same thing since we were 5 years old. And for me, like with my son, he'll get better at golf, but for me, it's more about having confidence and having the mechanics of the golf swing and hitting the center of the club face right now that will give him the confidence moving forward to, work on other clubs per se. But yeah, winning helps too. When you win and you're successful, it breeds confidence. So, win. Sure. At least try to. These guys are good. Guys that are coming in, you got to hit a lot of balls in play. But guys like we mentioned earlier, I'm having the old brain fart there. The kid that just came out and did really well. Chance. Yeah. The spotlight, and the stage didn't affect him. He went out there and he just hit. He hit his own ball, whatever his ball was. He hit it high, and he swung hard. And just a matter of it. Comes down to stamina if he can handle the pressure later on. Because someone like that kid, you could see him in the final 8. So yeah, anything's possible. But
yeah,
who do you got winning it? Besides,
I'll take my name out of it for the sake of this conversation. But I mean, it's hard to go against a lot of the favorites that we've seen all year in the last couple of years. Certainly to be in contention. I love the format now. When you get to the top 8, you have the 2 shootouts of 4 people and the top 2 advance and they do another. I think that's a great format. So making it to the round of 8 is kind of a different strategy. I think we probably know, like you said, we probably know who a lot of the top 8 are going to be. Certainly the top 16. And from there, whoever performs the best, whoever hits the best shot for those conditions at that moment, right when it matters, that's who we'll see.
I like how you didn't answer one person. You didn't say one name. One name. You got winning the world championship. Are you not allowed to say? You're not allowed to say in your own podcast?
No, I mean, I can say whatever. I as a competitor, I'm going there to win, and I'm feeling very good about where my game is now. But to be, more generous and everything, honestly, all the names that we mentioned are going to be really top competitors, and I expect to see them all do well at that time. So
everybody's a winner who's watching this.
No, one guy, but we'll all put up a good fight. So
yeah, well, I'm interested to see who's going to be there late, and I'm looking forward to calling the action. So
yeah. Well, I had a great time commentating with you in Utah. I hope I can't in Worlds, but it was a lot of fun, and thanks for your time here today as well. Where can people follow you? You do a lot on social media, so what's up with that?
Well, I mean, long drivers, obviously. It's nice to, I've made that pivot. I think a lot of people know, I'm an analytical dude and I can't be posting long drive all day, every day. Just the numbers don't support it. They would rather see maybe a funny meme or a girl hit a golf ball 4 feet, or maybe a girl hitting it, not over the net, but saying it went over the net at Topgolf, But, the Lawn Drivers page has been a lot of fun. And that, the purpose of that page in the beginning was to promote the sport of long drive and the hitters inside of that. And, just like in any business, you kind of make a pivot, but we're definitely going to be live and ready to rock and roll here in a couple weeks. And, the Bombers and Bombshells, Kyle and I doing a YouTube series with Eddie and Gabby Powell, who's out in Japan right now. I mean, that'll be fun. We'll bring in long drivers and bring other personalities into that show. But Long Drive has been awesome, a platform, for me since 2007. I've created multiple businesses from it. And, for me, it's about the brotherhood, the sisterhood, whatever you want to call it, the locker room atmosphere with the guys and the gals. And I've enjoyed it working with them and getting to know them personally. And we got friends all over the world from this sport. So it's given me a lot. And, whatever I can do to help promote the sport, I'm all for it. And, looking forward to being in Vegas here in a couple weeks.
Well, you probably know just about everybody in the sport, and I'm sure they know you, and you've done a great job of promoting it. And like you said, that locker room atmosphere, you're one of the best just fun guys to be around that exemplifies that exact thing. So that's always a good thing for the sport. And I think that's one of the things that draws people in is when they go out and they compete and they have a great time. Yep. Sometimes regardless of their performance, but they just have fun with the people and fun with the sport itself.
Absolutely. I remembered her name. Her name is Ali Mulhall. Watch out for her in Japan. Because like I was saying, like all she does is just hit the center. She hits a bunch of balls in play. So curious to see who wins the world championships out there. You know, and it's nice to see Sandra back and Phyllis, you know, competing. And I don't think that Chloe is competing this year, but interested to see how that format plays out, you know, with hitting multiple balls in play. So
yeah, same here. That'll be really fun to watch. And maybe in the future, there will be different events with different formats. You know how there's been a match play event over the years on the PGA Tour and things like that. Maybe we'll try some different ones.
Yeah, but the final 16 at the World Championships, if they have it exactly like last year, it doesn't get any better than that. It is an hour and 45 minutes of just all gas and no brakes. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again, Bobby. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. All right, man.
All right, man. Thanks.
That was a good one.